меня зовут Мельников Антон. Еще раз. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Мельников Антон, я ученик гимназии номер 2, и сегодня я хочу представить свою исследовательскую работу по теме различия между британскими и американскими диалектами в английском языке. Мой научный руководитель Полковская Алла Анатольевна. So, let's start with introduction. Nowadays, English is generally accepted. English is spoken, written, and read by more than 1.6 billion people every day, making it the most popular language in the world. And this language is native for more than 380 million people. English is official language for many countries, including the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Most books, magazines, newspapers are published in this language. Western radio and television promote not only culture, but also the language. These days, students learn English almost daily by watching movies, listening to music, and reading books. But we certainly notice differences between the English that is taught at school and the one that we are used to hear every day. All the above, the relevance of the researching project. The relevance is significance of two variations of the English language in the modern world. The aim of the project is identify the main differences between the British and American versions of English. So I'm going to tell you something about the history of English language. The history of English language began with three Germanic tribes that invaded Britain in the 5th century. These tribes, the Angles, Saxon, and Jutes, came from present Denmark and northern Germany. All the time, the people of Britain in Britain spoke Celtic, but the invaders drove the Celts to the western edges of the island, so what is now Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. The Angles called their country England, and their language was called English. Hence the words England and English. The formation of English language can be divided into three stages. The first one is Old English, the second one is Middle English, and the third and the last is Modern English. I will tell you shortly about each period of formation of English language. The first one is Old English. The invaded tribes of the Angles held sway over the Celtic tribes, whose language is largely preserved in Scotland and Wales. The dialect spoken by the invaders formed the English that is now commonly called Old English. The Middle English. The Middle English. This period in the development of the English language covers the period from 1066 to 1485. The invasion of the Norman feudal lords in 1066 introduced a new and powerful lexical layer of so-called Normanism into the Old English language, words that go back to the Norman French dialects of the Old French language spoken by the conquerors. And the last part is Modern English. This period can be counted from 1500 to the present days. It cleared the language and gave it shape and introduced many of the words that English speakers now use to communicate. So, the history of formation of the American version of English. The history of the formation of the American version of English connected with the history of the United States. English was introduced to North America by British colonists in the 17th and 18th centuries, after which, under the influence of various external and internal factors, the language acquired more distinctive features at all language levels. Among the first British settlers were peasants and representatives of the small and middle bourgeoisie. It also knows that in addition to them, many immigrants who speak Spanish, French, German, Dutch, Norwegian, Swedish and Russian arrived to America. They need a common language, they need to unite and communicate and work together. That's why English has become the link between immigrants and the main language of communication in the emerging huge country. The English language at the time was not uniform, even when borders of England. In the speech of the aristocrats, peasants and bourgeoisie, there were great differences. It was not a refined aristocratic version of English that came to America, but the language of the peasantry and bourgeoisie. Noah Webster's confirmation in American English. Disappointed with English textbooks suitable for teaching children, Webster decided to create his own. He said, "I'm too proud to be in debt to Britain for books to teach children." While still a teacher, Noah resented American elementary schools. One classroom was crowded with about 70 children of various age. Teachers were unskilled, desks were missing, and textbooks were sent from England. Webster believed that Americans should learn from American textbooks. So he started writing a 3-volume handbook, a grammatical institute of the English language. The publication consisted of spelling, published in 1783, spelling, phonetics, published in 1784, and anthology, published in 1785. The dictionary was a huge success and has not lost its meaning until now. Noah's goal was to provide children with a unique American approach to learning. Comparative short analysis of the lexic, grammar, and phonetics of two variants of the English language. The first one is phonetic features. Considering the phonetic features of the language, we need to pay attention to the difference in the following categories: sound, stress, and intonation. The first feature is pronunciation of the letter U. In the British, the letter transcribed as U, and American English, the J sound is absent from the transcription. Thus, it turned out New British and New American. Pronunciation, the letter A. Americans tend to substitute the deep back sound R for the so-called frog throat open sounds. It turns out last and last. This is one of the characteristic features to American speech. The next thing is ignoring diphthongs. Often, Americans replace diphthongs in speech with ordinary monosyllabic sounds, as, for example, in the word feed, an American would say fat. Ignoring intonational shims. In the process of advanced training in classical English, much attention is paid to intonation, shims, and types of tones. In the British version, these rules are unshakable, while the Americans do not follow them very closely. The next is grammatical features. The American version carries a large number of differences at all language levels. These differences are related to unique historic events, a large number of different borrowings from different language, as well as tendency to simplify language structures and units. However, there are relatively few grammatical differences between British and American English. There is a many regional trends considering morphology and syntaxes, and only a few are general syntaxes differences. Let's look at an example of the typical grammatical difference between the American version of English and the British version. Here. Lexical features. Many lexical differences now play a very important role, but these differences are largely due to the aforementioned Noah Webster. He introduced the practice of writing in the American version of English ER instead of RE, for example, center, matter, theater, OR instead of OUR, favor, honor, and labor, check instead check, yes. So, etc. Another feature of the modern spoken language of Americans is the designation of a class of objects or phenomena by one of the words of this class. This phenomenon the language is called synecdoche, notation of whole by part. For example, Americans call all theatric predators hogs. And to sum up a little, we can say that the grammatical differences between the American and British version of English are found mainly in the system of verbs and models of using tenses. But they are not so important to create problems with communicating with native speakers of different versions of the languages. In conclusion, I want to say that obviously the difference between American and British versions of English are quite noticeable. However, there are few significant differences between the American and British version of English. Sometimes it's difficult to know where a book was written by American or British author. However, there are more and more differences between these two languages every year. Notice every year. There is the question, which language should students learn, British or American? According to Russian linguists and teachers, the correct language is the British version. Correct basic English is also necessary in order to understand other language variants, dialects, and features. And to able to master them, a person with good classical English will not be lost anywhere, and if necessary, will be able to easily adjust, get used to a different modification of the language. You should also start with the British version because it's the most complete and rich language. American grammar is noticeably simplified compared to British grammar. American English can be called a sloppy language, but today American English is probably the most widely spoken language in the world. It is the main language of the communication in the Americas, Central America, and Canada. American English has become the language of the largest international businesses. It's used by 80% of the world's people. And despite the fact that there are a lot of debate about which language is correct, British or American, both of them, of course, have the right to use.